Welcome to Right on the Money, the weekly talk show with interviews you can use to help you maximize your money and optimize your financial future. Before moving forward with any of the ideas discussed on the show, always consult your financial advisor, insurance professional, or tax consultant. Looking for financial help or a second opinion? We can help you in your search. And now, your host of Right on the Money, syndicated financial columnist and money-colored commentator, Steve Savant.
In this segment, we're talking about owning wills versus trusts with estate planning attorney Elizabeth Westby. Elizabeth, let's do a little bit of dictionary work here first before we go too far. What is a will and what is a trust? Do I need them both? One, what do I do? What do they do for me?
Well, a will is a great document and it's a basic estate planning tool, but a will speaks upon death. So you don't reap the benefits of your will until you pass away. A trust is a breathable, flexible, living document that can be changed, and it can last and help you during your lifetime and beyond your lifetime. So effectively, you could be passed away for 20 years and your trust could still be working for you.
Okay, so I make my will, and that's kind of the disposition of my will. That's what they call it, a will, right?
Right.
And so I'm saying all the things I want to happen, my wife wants to happen. If you're married, so we're telling everybody this is the way it is. So that's the directives, right? I mean, and under that could be things like your healthcare directive and guardianship of minor children and things of that nature. Trust, though, is that really an entity or a kind of a standalone place to house assets?
Absolutely. So the trust is where everything is going to be pooled. Mm-hmm. And depending on...
why do we do that, by the way? Just why do we pool our assets?
Because when you pass away, your estate doesn't just disappear. It has to be managed. It has to be somehow determined and given to your beneficiaries. It's either going to be done according to your plan or according to the state in which you live. Mm-hmm. So why we want to pool it into a trust is because at that point, that is when your successor trustee, your executor, your personal representative, if this is the same person, then this one person, and they can go ahead and find everything easily.
It could be two.
It could be two.
Okay.
It just depends on your needs. But everything is in one place and easily located, and then you get your assets quicker, and it's private, and you avoid probate, and all those good things.
Okay, so I need to start collecting all my assets to figure out, does it all go in a trust then, would you say? Almost all of it? Or are there a few things that you wouldn't put in there?
Almost all of it does. Of course, your life insurance plan does not. Anything or retirement plans, 401ks, those can't be funded into the trust. But what you can do is you name the trust as the beneficiary. So then the proceeds go into the trust, again, pooling it into the one place, and then it can be distributed from there. Okay.
Well, I'm looking at how the trust can help me streamline estate administration. Sounds like I need it. And the family has access to the funds quicker. So we're talking about, like as we said last second, maybe 60, 90 days. If all the paperwork's done, it should be pretty expedited. I mean, right? It should be expedited pretty fast.
Absolutely. It should be nearly automatic, which is the goal. And that way your family can start the healing process because they're not dealing with probate and going through all of that heartache of years even possibly of administering the estate. And then of course the conflict and everything that goes along with it.
Married couples, mom and dad, do they each have their own will, or is it a combination? Is it one will by both?
Now, if you have the trust, you have your separate wills, and those are called pour-over wills, so they are attached to your trust. But each person has their own wills, their own medical directives, their own other general powers of attorneys, which is really important because normally a married couple will name the spouse as their immediate medical power of attorney or financial. But you want that backup person for when you don't know who's going to die first, right? You don't know if it's going to be your wife or it's going to be you. So you want to make sure.
I'm putting odds on the guy. So I'm just saying, normal mortality being what it is today in the U.S., brother, you're going down. So Well, then let's talk about we've talked about funding the trust. We've talked about mom and dad having their own pour over. You called it pour over will, right?
Right.
Okay. And I only need one trust for each then that has this area to accumulate assets.
Right. So it's the family trust that holds all of the assets of the marital property, unless, of course, you have a prenuptial agreement or a postnuptial agreement, then you can opt out. I know, I'm sorry.
Did you mean post?
You can do a postnuptial agreement.
Okay, so I have I have buyer's remorse or something. Okay, okay. So what's that about? Because I think everybody understands a prenup. This is where we make an agreement before we get married, right? What assets are going to be what and what's separate. Post-nuptial. I know. I'm sorry, I haven't heard that.
Well, it's important for a community property state because a lot of people want to make sure that they can have the option to buy property on their own that their spouse wouldn't be able to lay claim to. So same thing with a post-nuptial agreement. You get married and then you decide, well, actually, maybe we want to be able to have the choice to avoid the community property laws and buy property, sell property, have businesses that won't affect our spouse. And I think that becomes very important in the estate planning process as well, because that determines whether or not you can hold assets separately.
Well, Elizabeth, you practice in Arizona, community property state. You seen much of that lately?
Absolutely.
Post-nuptial.
Well, not so much post-nuptial, but prenuptial.
Prenuptial,
it's becoming a lot more popular, and I think that's because people are getting married later in life, and they're bringing something to the table. I mean, my folks, they get married when they're 20 years old. They're married for 40 years, but when they were 20, they didn't have anything, so it didn't matter as much.
Been there. Been there. Live the dream. Okay, so I like all these options, and really what we're doing is I would say that most people in their first meeting with an attorney are going to be shocked at all the options, all the alternatives that are out there that could actually manage their exact desires and will.
And I think that's why it's important to have an attorney who's really asking you what your plan is, what your family situation looks like, and that way he or she can really guide you through the process of these are more or less your options at this point. Sitting here talking about all of these examples, there is a lot of options out there. But when it's one person and a set of facts and one circumstance, the options are less, and it becomes clear what the best path is.
Well, it sounds like if I'm going to communicate to my attorney, if I'm married, my wife and I are going to communicate everything we want to do. We don't have to worry about the law. We don't have to worry about what goes where. We just have to say, this is all the things we want to do. Here's all our assets. And then you'll plug in the right documents and right paperwork to make it happen.
And give you ideas around, saving money for perhaps if you were both to pass away before your elderly mother, then maybe you want to have some money set aside to take care of her and her lifetime. And maybe you want to talk about education for your grandchildren or even your great-grandchildren. There's a lot that goes into it. And if you have property outside of the state of Arizona or outside of the state you live in, you want to make sure you address that as well. Because if you don't include that portion in your either funding of the trust or your estate plan, then again, you're looking at probate. So it is possible to have avoided probate on some of your assets, but then probate's a portion of the assets as well.
Okay, so if I forgot everything out of state and I didn't include it in the trust, Arizona could still, as a community property, pull it back in for that part through a probate. Is that correct?
Well, it's going to be probated through the state that it's located.
Oh, that it's located.
Right.
Oh, well, not good.
Right.
It may not even be a community property state.
It may not be.
Okay, so these are really important issues. So I have to make a list of everything I can think of in and out of the state. And I have to have directives. I'm thinking about the case that we just did with a client who the person has a child who's impaired. And that child needs to be taken care of. And that child will more than likely, based on medical technology, outlive mom and dad. So they're trying to provide for that child now, today, in directives, in funding, in trust work, specifically for that child.
Well, they're really, depending on the severity, but they're really looking at a special needs trust. I know a woman who now is in her 60s, and her daughter had a special needs child with Down syndrome, and she's now looking at creating a special needs trust for her child. Special needs trust is completely different than a regular trust.
A regular trust, wow.
And it's very specialized. So really doing your homework there is important because if this child inherits any amount of money, it could effectively ruin his or her chances to getting those government benefits that are so important when there are special needs.
So there's some management issues here from even the funding point of view, and to match up with what government programs are out available.
Absolutely.
Wow, that I did not know. Okay, so again, this is why we talk to our attorney and tell them everything we want to do, all our situations, and they'll plug in the proper trust, in this case, special needs trust, to take care of this example. Okay, but most of us are pretty normal people. I'm thinking if everything's in the state of like in my state, Arizona, I have everything in here. I have pretty much straight up assets. I've listed everything. I've done it. I'm going to have a will. I'm going to have a trust will, although after talking to you today, my wife might want her own. I'm just thinking that's probably what's going to happen. She's going to say, I watched your show, Steve, and I want my own way. So, wow. Well, that's what you get for putting it on the air. Remember, if you're listening to our show on radio, iTunes, or podcast, you can view the video version online right at rightonthemoneyshow.com and request information for this segment.
For more information on this week's money topics, just go to our website at www.rightonthemoneyshow.com and follow Steve's daily postings on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. When it comes to retirement, money management, small business, insurance coverage, college funding, or budgeting, we have the interviews you can use.